Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Speaking of Art School. My name is Thomas Houston. I'm a graduate of the San Francisco Art Institute class of 1984, and this is episode number 7. And today we have the great pleasure of having Jeanne Hansen, class of 82, joining us. And she is going to be coming in the room any moment here. I greatly appreciate your participating here with this. And I'm really interested to talk to you today. And I think we have a lot in common. And I think I'll just start by letting you take it away and talk a little bit about yourself, where you're from and how you ended up doing what you're doing, and everything in between. And I've got your photos in a folder. We can look at those. And
excellent.
So, yay.
All right. So I'm from Burlington, Washington, and in the late 70s, I ended up going to Brooks Institute in Santa Barbara, Brooks Institute of Photography. And prior to that, I had attended Washington State University for a year. And I just sort of realized that photography was something that I really loved and really connected to. And so that, I sort of convinced my folks that that was going to be my path. Right. And then I started at Brooks, even though I knew of the Art Institute, because I felt like a commercial school, a technical school, it had more opportunities for work and jobs, having a full career with that. But once I got to Brooks, I was there for about a year. Santa Barbara was great. It was absolutely beautiful. And, of course, sunny and the beaches and everything else. But I was a little disillusioned with the commercial aspect of Brooks. And I had met a friend, Forrest McFarland, who had moved to San Francisco. And this was like 79. And he was like, oh my God, this place is so great. There's so much happening, come visit, right? So I did. And it, the punk scene, was beginning.
Right. Yep.
And so, here was like a new movement, a new scene, and a new, music, like the Talking Heads and of course the Sex Pistols. And there was also a new wave. So it wasn't just like punk for me or for my friends at all. There was just this, kind of whole new experience of music. So I visited and it just seemed like the center of the world here, whereas Santa Barbara was like the rich and the beautiful and, all that, which was great for a while. But anyway, so I applied to the Art Institute and got in and thought, okay, I have 2 years left to get my 4-year degree. I'm going to do it. And that was the best choice of my life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So had you heard of the Art Institute before that time?
I had, when I was in high school, I'd always been involved in art and creating. I made my own clothes in high school. I was a seamstress and I took art classes. And even at WSU, art classes were always like, they were fun. They were easy. It was something that I always connected to, but I never thought, to make a career out of it. But in high school, I saw one of the catalogs and I was just like, oh gosh, that would be so fantastic. But I don't know, like my sister went to WSU and it was just kind of the thing to do, to go to the university in the state. And I think my folks, like, even though, I worked and I made a lot of my own money to attend school, I still, had their support as well to back me up.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
yeah, it was really great. And
Yeah.
so it took a while to convince them.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Awesome. Oh man. Well, once you got to the Art Institute, who were some of your instructors that you connected with? And were you taking, since you'd been to college before, were you taking other classes, like ceramics or printmaking or anything, or did you just focus right in on the photography?
I mainly focused in on photography. I did have a film history class with James Broughton,
Uh-huh.
which I absolutely loved. I mean, he was just such a sweetheart. And I had a good friend. I had one of the photos I sent you at graduation, Maria Burrows.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
She's in Miami, Florida now, but she was a filmmaker. So we were in that class together, and it like opened up, besides just the photography students,
Yeah.
friendships and stuff like that. But I had a painting class, and I also had a printmaking class. I needed to, like, a requirement,
Uh-huh.
but mainly the photography. And so one of my, Larry Sultan and John Collier Jr.
Uh-huh.
was one of my early classes. And John Collier, to me, I mean, nonverbal communication, and he just opened up a whole new way of thinking about, visual communication.
Right.
Which to me, I mean, there is so much about that nonverbal. I mean, where you're kind of reading the situation, the body language, the movement. I mean, and I can relate that so much to certain images that I took, like especially, the cover of the book.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I have your book right here, as a matter of fact. It's fantastic. It's
Thank you.
awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's great. Yeah, I think it's awesome. And I really wanted to see your show. We came into San Francisco to do a couple of things. It was a couple of days before Halloween, and they were having that epic bomb cyclone storm. That's what they called it. And it was crazy. We did make it into the city, and went to the museum and SFAI for a visit, but because of the weather, we just had to get home, so I wasn't able to see your show at the library in person. But I really wanted to. So the book is the next best thing. So
Thank you.
So that's awesome. But yeah, talking about the nonverbal communication in your photography, shooting in clubs, just in the midst of the action, that's, I can really relate to what you were just saying there about, body language and that energy.
Right. Watching the people. Well, and even like that shot with stannous fluoride on the BART escalator, so of course I'm shooting film, and it's 36 exposures. And like going back over the negatives, now that I have digital and also like a cell phone, it's like you can just shoot freely. It's, there's no cost involved. But back in the day of 35 millimeter, I mean, I really selected. I mean, it's like in your head, and I would only shoot like maybe 3 or 4 shots, of that escalator, and Stannis at the closing event for the library was telling his story of that, where he did go up and down it a couple of times, waiting for like people, to be surrounded by. But I mean, you had to really watch closely. Yeah, so film and this project, and even the dark room is a big part of the process. When I moved into San Francisco in 1980 and landed in the Mission District, with the friend Forrest, and he had already been renting an apartment, and it was a storefront. and with an art student from San Francisco State, Doug Kofod. So under the stairway, we built a dark room, and then in the storefront area, we had a gallery, and and then there was a neighbor, Pedro, who across the street could look down into the storefront and like see all this activity. So he came down and introduced himself, and he was from New York, and he was also an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So here was this collective outside of the Art Institute that was really a wonderful base for me, like being in art school and being around all this, other students, but then also back at home where the darkroom was. I mean, I didn't end up living there, but I had this space. So it was on 15th Street between Guerrero and Dolores. Just around the corner is 16th Street, is the Roxy Theater, is
right.
Cafe Picaro. I mean, it was like in the epicenter.
That's awesome. Yep.
Yeah, of the Mission District, that, really fertile. I mean, there was a lot of artists, there was a lot of musicians, because, it was kind of there was a warehouse across the street from us. And so, like, North Beach is as lovely as North Beach is, and I absolutely, like the Art Institute and the location, and Italy, North Beach and Chinatown. There was something about the Mission District and living in that area that really was great for like these alternative spaces.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. My girlfriend at the time and I moved to San Francisco in '79 with her, and we were living in Noe Valley for a little bit, and then we moved over to the Tenderloin. It's like, I appreciate exactly what you're talking about. But I'm just gonna share the screen here. I have all these photos. So here's the photo that is on the cover of your book, and that's great. So I'll just go through, and you can talk about them, and we'll just take it from there. So this is the next photo. This is you,
right? Obviously, that's in the Attitude, gallery storefront. That's the darkroom door. There was a big mirror on the door, and so Ellen Brooks, in the class with Ellen, I started doing self-portraits. And that was something that she was doing. I mean, Judy Dater, there was a lot of photographers that, were kind of experimenting with the self-portraits. So I just thought that was kind of really cool, to do your own, however you wanted. So that was that.
Awesome. Yeah. And just to go back a second, when you were at Brooks, were you working in the darkroom then?
Oh yeah.
Learning all about that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That was a major part. I mean, like, I had never been in a darkroom before. I had never taken any photography classes. Although I had bought my first camera when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
With money from picking strawberries, So I had, I had already kind of been exploring my own visual expression, with a camera, but never in a darkroom, never black and white.
Yeah. Awesome. That's awesome. Let's see, I'll just go to the next one here.
Yeah, that's the Attitude. That's an exhibit, like a show that they put together. Forrest, Peter Whitehead, those are his mobiles. Yeah. Awesome. The light was really nice in there too. We had the frosted glass window, and we a lot of times the openings were like pop-ups. We'd have the show, have a party, big party. We'd make flyers and put them all over the place, on telephone poles and posters. Of course, it's the 80s, it's pre-cell phone, so
right.
it's like the word got out there. That was really fun.
Exactly. All right.
So this is the warehouse across the street from it was the foremost McKinsey warehouse, like a dairy uh plant. Like, I don't know, they had ice cream. There was like, we would rummage through like these boxes. I mean, like, this photo was exactly like the all the stuff on the ground. I mean, it was just like that. We just were walking around. I didn't, tip the table over or anything like that. But
Uh-huh.
this is Forrest. I mean, he was aware of light. He just kind of went over and stood in the corner like that. And of course I saw it and took the photo. But I really, for me, like having these warehouses to run around in, it was kind of like this big open space, and it was so much fun. It was like a studio in a way for me. And again, Stannis Fluoride was the one that kind of introduced us to you're not really breaking in.
Yeah.
But he was in a group called the Suicide Club.
Uh-huh.
And he was the one that took us over the first time to the warehouse across the street, and sort of introduced the whole concept of sneaking into these spaces. I mean, nobody was there guarding them or anything. There was like a chain link fence that, you kind of squeezed through.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And here we are in, this is the kitchen at the Attitude. That's Doug. And we drank a lot of Rainier ale, called it the Green Death.
Ah, yes.
He was also an art student. So, it was a really great time to just be experimenting and just pushing all the boundaries in many ways. I think that's what, when you're in your 20s, especially if you're an art student.
Right. Oh man, that's great.
Yeah, that's the gallery again. And Lance and the Boobos is the name of the group, and they're practicing. And they were only together for a very short time. So like if one was to look them up, they probably wouldn't find them.
Uh-huh.
But these are all friends. Lynn, who's sitting on the couch singing, he's from England. And then Michael Shannon on guitar, Doug Kofod, Scott, and Susan Wannabe on drums. Yeah. So,
Awesome.
just the collective of people from all different places, that San Francisco attracted. And that there was something about that, living in San Francisco and just having this input of all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And what they had to share and their interests. And, so for me, coming from a small farming community, I was just like a little sponge, it was just so fun. The music, being exposed to all kinds of music and literature and ideas and attitudes. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and it seems to me that you definitely, took to shooting activities, bands, and performances like a fish to water in a way. Yeah, it just seemed like a natural thing. Just looking at your images, it looks that way to me.
But it was also a way for me to contribute to my community, to my peers. And there was Peter Belcito, who had Ego magazine, and he had the Tool and Die. And so like contributing to zines and being involved in the scene. And I had a boyfriend that was a musician. I mean, I've also, I've always been really drawn to music, and music is kind of at the forefront of every social movement and every youth movement, you know.
Right.
It's so accessible, right? The music scene. And so that, you know, like being part of that and contributing with my photography, right, was a really great way.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
So yeah, that's at the Club Offensive. That's Frightwig, Mia, and Deanna. And they still play. It was an all-women band, and they still perform occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit familiar with them, you know, for sure.
Very
And
cool.
I have entertained the thought of having one of these interviews with some of the musicians that came out of SFAI. I think that would be kind of a cool thing as well.
Right.
But
in which the Mutants, I believe Fritz was a student at SFAI, as well as Sally, who's the one with the mic.
Okay.
In the middle there, Sally Webster.
Awesome.
Yeah, and she's still doing her art.
That's great.
Yeah, I think she's on the East Coast now.
Huh.
Yeah, that's at the I-Beam.
Yeah.
Oh, and there is Robin Ballinger.
Right.
She's an instructor at the Art Institute, or was. I'm not sure what's going on with the school right now. It seems to be having some.
Yeah, I think things are in flux right now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about any of the details too much, but it's definitely in a transitional phase for sure.
Yeah. Survival Research Laboratory under the freeway. That was an opening for DVA, a club, and those were always kind of very dangerous performance installations to go to. Yeah. Wow. Mark Pauline and Matt Hackett and the group.
Yeah, I remember Mark Pauline. He would make these like robot self-destructing machinery pieces that would fight against each other or like shoot bowling balls or something like.
Right. This was called Sprinkler from Hell.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was kind of one of those things too that you just kind of had to hear about. It wasn't broadcasted on public radio or anything, and so that was kind of a underground scene in many ways, whereas now he no longer is. I mean, he shows at MoMA.
Right. Interesting. Right.
The Gartland Pit, and that's Kurt Lipchitz. And do you want to hear some history about this?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, well, this was Poetry in the Pit, and that's Kurt Lipchitz and Ken Trey, who's my husband now. He's sitting down there along the wall. He put together, and Peter Plate, and they're throwing words against the rubble for the ghosts that perished in the fire. So in 1975, there was suspected arson for profit, where 12 people died in the blaze.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of activism around this pit, and the Urban Rats were an activist group that would they helped clean it up. And you're going to see in the next photo, it should be Contraband. Yes. So this was Contraband with Sarah Shelton Mann and Keith Hennessy and Jess Curtis. And these guys are still all dancing. They're still all performing, which I think is just incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Because this was when they were young and just kind of doing these performances in a site-specific place. And this performance, this was at the end of the dance performance. And so they have the kind of ritualistic, dance around the fire for the Gartland Pit. And And so then in the book and also in the exhibit that was at the San Francisco Public Library, which I want to say was just absolutely fabulous, working together with the team there, the exhibition team.
Uh-huh.
And then Penelope Houston, who was in collections up on 6th floor, that sort of helped open that door to get that show in there. But there was also interviews. And so
Yeah.
Keith Hennessy, who's the guy kind of in the background with the hat on,
Okay.
the dancers. Yeah, so that really added a lot of depth to, like digging into the individuals that are in the photos and them sharing their stories and their history.
Awesome. Right.
And working together with Jonah Raskin on that. And it just really gave another level and historic perspective.
That's,
Yeah.
That's great. Wow.
There's Dana Smith, who was also a student at the Art Institute. I believe she got her master's there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so she's still in the Mission District and still painting and showing, and
Great.
yeah, she's a good friend.
Excellent.
Yeah, and there is Cafe Picaro with Ken Trey. And so he became a school teacher and political director of San Francisco Unified School District, but this was back in the 80s. And so he was writing for the North Mission News and putting on poetry readings. And this is at Cafe Picaro. And yeah, so the kind of political side that I got more involved in too, like activism and stuff, he was kind of my friend who opened those doors for me.
Right.
And then working with, contributing to the North Mission News. So that, photojournalism opened up.
Yeah. Let's see. That's a great photo. I mean, all of them are great, but
Thank you. Yeah, I feel this one kind of has says something about the times. It seems like the economical status of San Francisco at the time, I mean, like the billboard is all kind of ripped up, and falling apart, and like you don't see that these days.
No. Yeah, this image actually seems very familiar to me. I must have seen that, just living down there. There's just something really familiar about that. But
Tony Labat.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that was the opening of Club 9 in the South of Market and Mark Rennie's club. And so Tony's doing a flagpole Kelly. Kind of, to bring attention to the club as it's opening. And so there's a video camera on him. So inside the club is a video performance of Tony sitting outside on this pole.
That's awesome.
And I have an interview with Tony, and he was saying he was scared to death of heights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's such a character. He is just wonderful.
Yeah. I interviewed him for like episode number 5 or something a number of months ago, and we had a great conversation. And so that's great.
Matthias Harmilo, who was also a student at the Art Institute, he's doing a performance piece here he was one of Tony Labat's students. So Tony really influenced a lot of these young artists. Like Matthias came from Colombia, Bogota, and it's at a space called Show and Tell, and that was near the Oasis.
Okay.
Kind of South of Market area.
Yeah.
And then of course Dale Hoyt.
Right. Who recently passed away. So
yes. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and he has a punk performance exhibit up at the Tenderloin Museum right now.
Right. Yeah, I was wondering if that existed when we lived down there. We lived on the edge of the Tenderloin in 1978 and a little bit into 79 and just on the fringe. But anyway, I thought that was interesting that there was a Tenderloin Museum, but I don't know. I don't know if it existed then or not, but
Yeah, I don't know either.
huh,
That's a good question.
yeah.
When it started up, it seems like it's a newer space, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe originally it was like in a different location or something
Yeah,
within the Tenderloin.
right.
But
Huh.
yeah, I mean his vision for the show, he also has, I believe, 15 interviews, and then they have flyers from the time, and
Mm-hmm.
ARE was one of the clubs, Sound of Music, and then Steve Parr's 181 Club were the
Uh-huh.
three focal point places in the Tenderloin.
Yep.
This is 1983 when Ronald Reagan and the Queen of England came to San Francisco to have a lavish dinner at the De Young Museum.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
so the Urban Rats built this effigy of Ronald Reagan on an MX missile.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we were all out protesting, the politics of the day of both Reagan and the Queen,
Mm-hmm.
in you know before the dinner, which was in the evening. So this is
Wow.
the Panhandle, getting everything ready.
Wow.
And I was there, of course, documenting it.
Uh-huh.
And I want to say something too, like the guy in the plaid shirt that has the Queen of England,
Right.
mascot tied to him, it's my brother. and
Oh,
and he was driving truck for North American Van Lines at the time, and he was just stopping to visit. And I said, Mark, we gotta go down to this march. And so there he was helping out. And
that's awesome.
yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah, and all kinds of people came out for the to protest and demonstrate. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, and I'm just kind of moving through the crowd, looking for interesting people. And
Yeah.
this is the 1984 Democratic Convention that was in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
National Convention.
Yep.
And I came down for a short time. I think I had to leave and go to work. But the thing that's interesting about this shot too is like we still are saying the same thing: no war,
Mm-hmm.
no KKK, no fascist USA.
Right.
I mean, it's unfortunate that we still have the same battles
Mm-hmm.
as
Right.
in 84. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And guess who that is?
That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you graduated in 82, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you graduated the year that I started at,
Oh wow.
at SFAI. Yeah. Yeah. I started in 82, but had been living in the Bay Area for a few years before that. And so, but that's great. That's Stephen Goldstein.
Yes.
I recognize him.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's me and Maria
Awesome.
Burrows. Yeah.
And was she graduating as well
Yes.
then?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And then we're into the color.
Right. And so you had asked for some more recent.
Yeah.
And I worked on a big project with I think there was 11 photographers, and this is in Skagit Valley, where
Uh-huh.
I'm from, and it was with an organization called Skagitonians to Preserve Farmland. And we put together, well, the Historical Museum and Skagitonians put together a book called Harvesting the Light and
Uh-huh.
an exhibition. And so for a year, well, a year and a half, us 11 photographers went out and photographed Skagit Valley farmland.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
it was a really wonderful experience, to work together and put together this book. I mean, I wasn't, on the level of putting the book together. I mean, I was
Mm-hmm.
shooting, but the fact that, it sort of inspired me to do my book as
Uh-huh. That's
because,
great.
yeah.
Awesome.
And then I ended up living on this farm for a couple of years. I rented a house on this apple orchard. And so this was when I was actually living on the farm. And I've always really loved shooting the environment that I'm living in, that I'm part of, and having access to that at different light, different seasons, different everything. I would just wander out into the orchard
Right.
and
That's
shoot.
great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So this was for Harvesting the Light on a organic farm.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, the guy was there helping out. What the woman that ran the farm, there was a couple, Charlotte and Glenn Johnson,
Uh-huh.
and she really didn't like this photo to represent the organic, small slow
Yeah.
farm, but the woman that was in charge of selecting the images for the exhibit and the book just really loved this photo, which of course I do too.
Yeah. No, it really captures the feeling.
Yeah, and Gabe De La Rosa was a friend, and he's out there digging the ditch for the power line on this farm.
Yeah.
But he's also a musician.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, great musician.
That's great. And then there you are.
Yeah, and one more from
Uh,
Skagit Valley, more current photo.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, for anybody, I looked up where you live just so that I would have a geographical reference. So you're above Seattle on the coast, way up there. So
Right.
that's great. That's awesome. I think that's the last image.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
well, good. Well, we've got a couple more minutes here, but this has been fantastic. I highly recommend anybody that's watching this to get your book. This book is really well done, and it definitely captures the feeling of the times. And yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, it's a treat to be interviewed by you and
Oh,
be part
good.
of your project. I'm
Well,
honored, very honored, and yeah, and I'm hoping that this body of work, I'm going to continue to pursue locations to put it up. Maybe
uh-huh.
even travel with it,
Right.
like Portland and Seattle,
Oh,
and
that's great.
yeah,
That's a good idea for sure. Absolutely.
there seems to be a real now that it's 40 years later, a
Mm-hmm.
real interest in that time period and that
Right.
whole, movement.
That's great. Well, good. Well, I thank you so much, Jeanne, for doing this. And I hope at some point that our paths cross in the real world.
Yes.
And that would be delightful to meet you in person. And so I'm very appreciative of your willingness to do this. And it just took us a while to connect, but it's all good, you know?
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And yeah, art school, and I hope the Art Institute continues. I mean, it was just an absolutely amazing experience.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, and we'll be in touch.
All right, Thomas.
Okay, take care, Jeanne. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Okay, bye. You've been listening to Speaking of Art School, an oral history project created to perpetuate the culture and legacy of the San Francisco Art Institute. I'm your host, Thomas M. Houston. If you're an alumni of SFAI and would like to participate in this project, please contact me at thomasmhoustonartist@gmail.com. Please stay tuned for upcoming episodes, and as always, thanks for listening.